Chase.
Jackie. Melissa.
Nice to meet
Drew.
you. Nice to
Hi,
meet
Drew.
you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in today, guys.
Jackie, you may have a seat here. Thank you for joining us today. Have either of you ever been to mediation before?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, well, welcome. My name is Chase, like I said, and this is Drew. We're both very experienced mediators. We've been working together for about 20 years now. So this mediation will be in confidentiality. We are third-party neutrals, and we will remain neutral throughout this whole process. This is between you two. We will work this out, and Drew will go over a few ground rules here in a second. Also, another thing we'd like to add is we're trying to build trust. Okay, the trust between all of us that this will remain confidential and will not leave this room. Is that fine with you?
Yes.
With you as well? Okay.
All right, so I want to take this opportunity to cover a couple of ground rules before we get started. Chase mentioned it a couple of times, and I just want to reiterate that what happens in here today is going to stay in here, that it's going to remain confidential. We want this to be a building block for you guys to move on beyond this situation, whatever it is, which we'll learn about in a second. But we don't want what is said here, the specifics of what we cover, to leave this room. So as I go through the different ground rules which we use for every mediation we do, I'd like to have each of you verbally agree that they're okay. So the first one is that what's said in here stays in here, where this is going to be a confidential process. Can you agree to that, Melissa?
Yes, I can.
Great. And Jim?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. I'm a big note taker. I'm going to be taking notes. It's not a report card. It's not a score-keeping sheet. I just like to take notes about what you guys say, different issues. So I'm going to take notes. If either of you would like to take notes, Chase sometimes takes notes. So I just want to let you guys know about that. Is it okay with you for me to take notes?
Yes. Will you be throwing these away after?
I will cover that in just a second.
Okay.
But I'll cover it right now
Okay.
while we're here.
Okay.
I know, we will, everything that we produce in here, in terms of things that I write in my notes, things that Chase writes, go right out to the shredder. There is one exception to that. Depending on if you guys want, at the end of this, we can either just have a verbal agreement, we can cover some things, you guys can shake hands, and we can move on from there. If you prefer, we can come up with a written agreement. We can jot some things down, cover some solutions that we come up with during this. We can sign that, and then you are both have a copy of that you can keep. We are not judges, we're not lawyers. That doesn't have any legal backing, but it's something that you guys can use moving forward in your relationship. That's something we can cover at the end of the mediation, whether we want that written agreement based on where we stand. So none of the notes will be kept, but there's a possibility that there will be that written agreement, which will be the only thing that leaves this room. So is it okay with you? Can you agree to us taking notes during this process?
Yes, true.
And Jackie, is that something that's
Yes.
agreeable to you? Perfect.
Yes,
You're each going to have a chance to talk about why you're here, and we want you each to have equal amount of time, and we want you not to interrupt each other. Is that something that you think sounds like a good plan for equal time and no interruptions?
Yes. Yes.
Great. A big thing for us is respect. We want you to respect us and especially respect each other. So I'm going to ask no foul language, no name calling, anything that is disrespectful or might be perceived to be disrespectful. Please don't use any of that. It's very hurtful. Is that something you think you could agree to?
Yes, true.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. And like I said, this is a mediation, so we're going to be trying our best to have you both have an equal chance to talk about what's happening here. So we ask that you be considerate of how much time you're giving for the other person to talk so that we can have an equal chance.
And that you both speak to each other when you're talking, and not us.
Thank you. See, this is why great team. You guys are talking about this. We're here to help, but you're not presenting a case to us. You're not arguing for our approval. We want you guys to have this as a conversation between the two of you. So is the equal time and the talking to each other something we can agree on? Great. Thank you,
Yes.
Melissa. Thank you,
Yes.
Jackie. I feel like a flight attendant at this point, but can you just turn your cell phones off? I don't want anyone to have any distractions. So if you just turn that off for us,
Please.
that'd be
Thank you very
great.
much.
And I'm gonna turn it over to Chase here, and he's gonna kind of go from there.
So basically, I'm just going to go over what exactly we're going to be doing here, and this is just so you're on the same page as us. And what we're going to have is our opening statements. We already did our opening statements. Now it'll be your turn. You both will have equal time to present your opening statements to each other in a nice discussion fashion. And then we are going to work towards something called common ground. Common ground can be basic, something that we're trying to find that ties you two together in similar fashion that will help us ultimately come to solutions and another agreement at the end. So then we go to creating options. And then after you two have created options and possibilities, then we'll look for an agreement. If agreement is not reached, like Drew said, today, we can always come back with our notes at another time. But hopefully we can find a solution today. So with that being said, would either of you like to open the discussion?
I'll go.
Jackie.
Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, we both work in the same place, obviously. We work for a university, and we both are coaches of very young programs, me being softball and you being hockey. And we run into the chance, the opportunity, the possibility of us either sharing athletes that play both sports. And when our seasons overlap, I just sense it's hard for me because I get a non-traditional season. My season occurs in the spring, and my non-traditional season, when I run my tryouts, occurs in the fall. And you don't have the opportunity to have a non-traditional season, so your season is when your season starts, and what I'm trying to do is run my tryouts with anybody who wants to try out from the women's hockey team. And I don't feel as if I'm getting the fair, a chance to look at them and see what they can do and what they can bring to my team. I do know that we both go out and we do both work hard at recruiting, top athletes for very young programs. But there is also the chance that one of my softball players is going to want to be playing hockey. And I feel as if we've run into an issue there because there's more hockey players that want to play softball, and I can't get them to have a fair tryout in the fall because of all the demands of the hockey season that don't start until October. So.
Great, thanks, Jackie. Melissa, would you like to, this is your opening statement, so your thoughts on the situation.
Well, yes, Jackie, we are both head coaches of two very young programs, and obviously we each want our programs to be as successful as fast as we can be, and we go about our recruiting our own ways. I would rather get in the car and drive and spend 22 hours a day taking care of what I need to take care of to be able to sleep at night, or for a few hours to make sure I've recruited the players that I really want, to put in the time and the effort to drive the 8 hours to meet with them for 20 minutes to an hour to get back in the car and drive the 8 hours home and come back and run practice. That's the dedication that I put into our sport. And I'm looking for a specific player, and that player that I'm looking for is a very talented athlete, so they're able to play other sports as well. So although they may be a middle of the pack player for us and a better player for you guys, I really need to make sure that I have that player on campus and it's dedicated to our program. And sometimes I get frustrated when I feel that you're doing your own method of recruiting from our women's hockey team. The way I look at it is you have one hockey player on your team, 3 women's soccer players on your team, and 2 basketball players on your team. How many people, I shouldn't ask how many people you play at once. I know that, I've played softball my whole life, but when you look at the overall spectrum of your team and the breakdown, and the majority of them are all playing other sports, it's frustrating to me that I'm spending so much time on the road and following up these kids academically to make sure that they're doing what's required of them from our standards, and then they come to me saying, hey, coach, I can't be at practice, I can't be at tryouts because we're in softball, fall ball, which hockey is 19 consecutive weeks, and I need those kids from day one. We have 3 weeks until our first game, and we're a new program. I need to make sure that practices are going the way that we want them to be, so we're shaping up to be able to compete with the Division III team, especially taking that step from the club level to the Division III level. So that's where I'm coming from in my frustration. So I'm sorry that it's had to get to this point to where we needed mediators to help us solve these issues, but at this point, I'm putting my team in front of our personal issues because I really want what's best for them. No different than yourself, but my team comes first.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to?
No? Thank you.
Jackie?
You had touched on how you go about and do your recruiting for your players, and you'll drive 8 hours to go, meet with somebody for 20 minutes. And I do the exact same thing, and I do it with the help of the women's soccer coach and the women's basketball coach, because those are players that I'm going after, that I'm referring to them as, hey, they're also interested in playing, basketball, or they're also interested in soccer. And with the women's soccer coach, I've never had an issue, and her season is in the fall when my tryouts are going on. And they're mainly, if you want to play that card, my athlete, okay, that I'm allowing to play soccer, because I am all about the betterment of her program as well. She lets them come to a couple days a week of conditioning and team bonding, and 1 day of practice a week. So I can see them and how they're going to fit in and be with their teammates who they're going to be with in the spring. So me making that type of, if you want to call it a sacrifice, to have my kids go and play other sports, and then they come back to my sport, where my sport is the last sport. I have someone who plays soccer, who plays basketball, and who plays softball. And by the time they get to my sport, guess what? I run the chance of this girl being my recruit, that they are tapped out. What are they going to give to my program? But you want to know something? I am about not just the betterment of my program, I am about the betterment of another young coach who has come in, and a coach who had struggled with numbers last year. And if that, my athlete, who's my recruit, can be a benefit to their programs, absolutely 100%. But there has to be some gift. There has to be some sacrifice, because technically, okay, I'm the one who brought this girl in. However, without trying to tap this girl out completely and make sure that she's doing her studies and that she's doing her community service, she's doing her fundraising for that spring trip that we're doing in March for softball, she's with her teammates. She knows all her teammates from soccer to softball. And I feel as if, my recruiting is going out to different states and trying to get these girls to come in. And if I see that they're interested in another sport, especially one as young as yours, just like mine is, I'm going to refer them to you. And I would want that same respect, and hoping that you'll be able to help benefit my program.
Melissa, would you like a chance to respond?
Jackie, I understand that we do our recruiting differently, but at the same time, I think you're right, I think it's important that, we use each other's programs. Like, hey, come to our school, because not only is our hockey team awesome, our softball team does well at the same time. They're great, and they're on their way to winning a national championship. I understand how important that is and how we want to work together and bounce things off of each teams and be able to share athletes. But at the same time, when it's affecting my team, then it becomes an issue. I have our kids doing fundraising and community service events in the spring, in the fall, as soon as we get here at school, so that way they can build that camaraderie with the team throughout those first few weeks, even though we're not allowed to start until October. And it's frustrating that you're trying to pull one of my players out of that when I'm spending the time on the road to make sure that I find these quality athletes that I want, and they're driven, like their number one priority is hockey. So I feel bad that they're only giving you a half of what they're able to give you at the end of hockey season, but at the same time, I need them. I'm out there, hockey's their first priority. The reason why they're here is for hockey. So that's why I'm taking the time and effort to do this, and why I'm hesitant about letting them be part of the soccer program as well.
Okay, so let me pause this for a second, and I think I'm pretty sure we both get the gist of what the situation is and where we're at, and we can also, I think we both can work towards some common ground that I've written down myself, and I'm sure Drew has as well. And I guess the first thing, and we can look at the problems, and we have written them down. And, obviously, the non-traditional season versus an in-season, and the aspect of athletes. You both want to have the athlete at your events, and not missing practice or fundraising or community service, stuff like that. So that's the underlying issue, Mike. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Fair to say. Okay, so let's just start with something basic, with just a basic common ground. The fact that you're both head coaches for aspiring female programs that are relatively new here, and that's something that, is that fair to say?
Yes.
As well for you?
Yes.
Okay. And Drew, please feel free to jump in.
And that encompasses a lot of common ground in the toughness of recruiting in that type of atmosphere of trying to build a program. I think that brings in a lot of common ground that we'll go and mention, but so we're kind of a great starting spot here, ladies. I really like where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
So, another aspect of our common ground is that you both have the student athlete's best interest in mind. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct for you as well. Okay. And then another thing that I want to point out as common ground is that you both want your program to be successful, and that's understandable. Is that correct with you, and correct with you as well?
And I think that's your program, both your teams, but also the athletic department, the university as well. Any success one team has, the name recognition will help the other team. So it's important as a department you're growing as well. And I think, is that common ground we can agree on?
We can.
Great, most of that's perfect.
Awesome. And then ultimately that both helps you recruiting wise, is what I have written down here, is it helps you for dual sport athletes that are very talented and would like to come. Is that correct for you and as well? Okay, excellent. And then ultimately you both work at the same school, and which resolves back to what Drew just said, is you want to have a successful athletic department. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
For both of you as well? Awesome. So I guess what we want to do now is go into our third step, which is the creating options and ultimately working towards the agreement. Now that we've found our common ground, and both of you had agreed on the common ground that we have listed, so is there both of you would like to start on possibly creating a solution to an ultimate agreement?
Well, I think because we both want the same things, essentially, okay? And if one of us finds an athlete for ourselves and they're a dual athlete and they want to play one of our sports, okay? So if I find a softball player who's also interested in hockey, okay? I can understand the demands that you are going to place on her when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to community service. Because ultimately, community service, we both do, and 99% of the time we do it together, okay? I've never had an athlete say, well, I have to go, represent the hockey team. Like, for us, it was normally always, well, they're representing the female sports because we always usually do our stuff together for fundraising. The area that I'm running into is just the practices. I understand that, I guess you could say that I'm lucky to have, 4 weeks in the non-traditional in the fall, and that's wonderful for me. But that also gives me the time to assess, make my cuts, start working with my team, and then I lose them for 4 months. I cannot work with them, I cannot do anything. So having those 4 weeks is very crucial to me. And one of the things that I'm willing to do that I've done with, like I said before, with soccer is, you know, if I can't have them, so to say, for 4 weeks, you know, we gotta maybe find an agreement where we can work and I can compile maybe 2 weeks of working with them and having them, you know, bond with the team. Because I'd rather have them not come in and not know any of their teammates. And not being able to, like you said, using your words, use that, you know, have that camaraderie with their teammates, because they're going to be with you for 19 straight weeks and having all the success and wonderful fun there. And then they're gonna come to my sport and not know anybody and not know how I'm trying to implement practices and what we expect skill-wise and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that I'm definitely willing to do.
And I think I'm willing to bend with my strictness as well about how, the hardest thing to me is that you have 4 weeks, but then they're gone for 4 months. But at least you have the 4 weeks to prepare during those 4 months for what you have. With me, we have 3 weeks of practice until we play our first game. So it's important when I do have the kids and I'm finally able to work with them, I'm with them every day and I'm getting 100% up. So maybe we can find a way to, before those 3 weeks start, incorporate them a little more in your practices. Or maybe I can be more involved in your recruiting process as well.
I think that one of the things if we want to do the recruiting process is we can start working more together at open houses, because those are a great way to meet, you know, potential student athletes for both sports.
Right, but for me, the players that come on open houses don't typically last as a player here for our team. I can be there. And
Well, no, if it's not going to be an agreement, it's not going to serve a purpose for you, then, you know, I'm okay with not doing that, trust me, I'd rather not do open houses, but anyway. What we can do is, you know, you utilize Front Rush and I utilize Front Rush, right? We can sit there and when we put athletes in our database or someone goes on and fills out the questionnaire and we notice that they are a dual sport athlete, then we can share it with each other and just kind of, you know, if someone's interested in softball, then I can do my research on them and just, you know, maybe right off the bat, I'm just gonna know, well, they don't play for a very good travel team. They don't play for a very good high school team. They just started playing and maybe they're not invested in that program. They just want to play it like it's not an NCAA Division III sport. And I would hope that you would do the same thing if you notice somebody, you know,
I could pass them.
hockey-wise.
I think we've made a lot of progress here in talking out what our concerns were about starting to come up with some solutions. And I mentioned this earlier when we first sat down, and now we're getting back to the part where we need to talk about that final agreement about how we're going to move forward. And we discussed that option of having it written down or having it be verbal. Based on our experience with this type of thing, it sounds like this is going to be one that we might want to keep verbal. It sounds like you guys have a good framework for a working relationship, and this might be something that continues to evolve how you work together. And so I wouldn't want to set limits on how much you can work together by putting it in writing. I think having, if we get a little bit more here, have it be a verbal agreement, leave on the same page, I think that'll be much more useful for you both as coaches and for your programs going forward than having the signed agreement. That said, if you would prefer to have the signed agreement, I'm happy to do that as well. So is the verbal agreement okay with you?
I'm okay with the verbal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Verbal,
I'm
oh,
good with
great.
that.
That makes me so happy.
Okay, so, not to interrupt you, Drew, but
Please.
some of the solutions that I've written down that you guys have already proposed, and is willingness to work together on recruiting via your Front Rush recruiting system, is that correct? And you both are willing to work
I think that's
at
a
that?
start, yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then the willingness to work on your schedules, and I know you both probably have to sit down and look at your schedule more in depth, and willingness to work out a schedule that works for the athlete and in yourselves as well. Does that sound like a solution that you've come up with as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. And then the other thing that you guys touched on was community service, and the fact that you actually both proposed that you work together you both do the same similar community service activities, so ultimately you're already working together, and that's something that works best for you, is you go out and do things together for community service. Is that a solution as well?
Yeah.
Excellent. Drew, did you have anything else to say, or did you guys have any more solutions that you wish to propose during this mediation session?
This is just a really hard, like, it's really emotional for me because my team is so important to me, and I feel like I want to get the best out of them. So as much as I'm willing and I'm going to work with you and cooperate and gladly be, like I said, if your program's doing well, then it's easier for me to recruit, you know, because especially, like, hey, come to our school, we're a powerhouse in athletics. It's great.
Well, I just hope you
It's
also
just a piece of
realize,
my heart emotionally that has a hard time letting go.
well, I just hope that you also realize that, you know, it's very important to me too. Like, I don't have my family here. My girls, you know, pretty much are my girls, okay?
Same with me.
I really have taken, you know, invested a lot into this just like you, so I want to make sure that, you know, their transition from high school to college is as smooth as possible, and that obviously is going to start with you and me having to work together and, you know, working on some sort of, you know, compromise for everything, so.
I think that's great. And I'll be okay. I really will.
Okay,
I've been a great sport about it.
I think we're at a good place right now for both of you to move forward as coaches, for your teams to move forward, for your, what you both, I think, what I had put a couple stars next to it at the beginning was the student athlete, was who you were most concerned about. And I think we're at a place right now where that's what we're considering first and foremost, is their experience playing for your teams. I think that was important for both of you, so I'm glad we got to a point, so.
And I think you just said it, Drew, too. Like, ultimately, you have to look back and realize that it's about their 4-year experience.
Mhm.
So if they want to play other sports, I can't be holding them back from playing other sports. You know, they have 4 years of college athletics. I want them to have the best experience they can.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, after your solutions, and you guys have both verbally agreed on it, we appreciate you coming here to mediation, and we are glad that we were able to successfully agree on something that you both are pleased with, and we look forward to hearing back from you if all possible, and then
We look forward to coming to some games.
Great.
yeah.
We hope that we don't have to see you again in this room, but just, you know, if anything does come up, remember the second session is half price, so feel free to give us a call.
Great.
All
So
right.
you can-
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.